Okay, it is time for us to play everyone's favorite game, Will It Sourdough? And if it's not your favorite game, then I don't understand why I just made it up. It should be your favorite item. This is where we are going to take a regular schmegular old sourdough recipe and replace one or more of the ingredients with something else. Today, we are going to use applesauce in place of the water and a little bit of honey, and we're gonna see what this does. Okay, so I have never felt more pressure in my entire life to do drugs than I ever have to make sourdough. And here's the thing, I've been making sourdough for a really long time. This is Jack, he's my starter, and we've had him in our family for 200 years. So Jack and I, we go back a long way. I like to make different kinds of sourdough. I do a basil pesto, basil pesto. I've done a bacon cheddar ranch, blueberry lemonade. I've done several, but I thought, you know, sourdough is one of those like really forgiving things, and I wonder what else I could do to it to make it fun and interesting again. We're gonna replace some of the water with applesauce, and maybe we'll put some caramel bits in it too. Regular schmegular old recipe. This is the recipe that I use. It's kind of foolproof. I'm gonna put the instructions and the weights down below, but also I will tell them to you now. So I use 100 grams of starter. You don't necessarily need a scale. However, I have found that having a scale is extremely helpful as far as getting the measurements accurate. For the water, I am going to replace it with some applesauce. So 100 grams of starter. Usually with water, I do 325 grams. Now for me in Arizona, 325 works, but anywhere between 325 and 350, half of this water with applesauce. 325, 150. We'll just go 175. It's not an even split, but we'll go 175. I'm an English teacher, not a math teacher. Oops, I stopped paying attention. Oh, 174 on the money. Perfect. Okay, and now I am gonna add a little bit of honey just because I feel like that would be good, maybe. We'll do 10 grams of honey. All right, I'm at 195, so that's 20 grams of honey. And now for the rest, I'm just gonna put in some water. So hold on, I forgot to, we need water. Or 325. What have you put in, like, do you make sourdough? And even if you don't, like, what do you think would sound good? Because I want this to be a series. We're going to do Will It Sourdough? And if we make this a series, what do you want me to try? So now I like to mix the liquid ingredients together before I add any of the dry ingredients, just because it's easier to mix together when I do that. I just realized this bowl is too small. One second. All right, bigger bowl. I'm gonna dump that in there. So we're gonna add our flour. I don't know why I'm doing this because I've tried a sweet sourdough loaf before. It did not work out well. Did not record that for posterity though, so here we go. The next ingredient is 500 grams of flour. So we're gonna clear that out there. And just add our flour. 500 on the money. Boom. And then I am going to go ahead and add the salt now. I like to do 10 grams of salt. Some recipes will tell you to delay the salt because it can delay your fermentation. I live in a very warm climate, so I add my salt now. If you live in a warmer climate or you don't want your dough to ferment as quickly, you can add the salt. It will slow it down just a little bit. If you live in a cooler climate and you want it to ferment faster, then you can add the salt at a later date. I've never really had much luck incorporating salt later, so I just do it now. So now I've got all of that. We're gonna mix it together. I do have a Danish dough whisk and I do like this for making sourdough. However, do you need it? No. You can also do this in a stand mixer if you wanted to. And if you do it in a stand mixer, it's like less babysitting later. I feel like I can feel the dough better and I just get a lot better feel for it. This stage is what's called the fermentalize stage. We are going to add all of the liquid ingredients and the dry ingredients together, and then we're gonna make it like a really shaggy. We're gonna make it a really shaggy dough. So it's gonna be like not sticky, but it's not gonna be like a smooth dough ball. What we wanna do is combine the wet, combine the dry, and then give it about a half an hour before we touch it again. Give the flour time to be absorbed into the liquid. This is where you're gonna decide if you wanna add more water or not. The fermentalize stage, it's gonna be kind of sticky, but you don't want it to be overly sticky. But if it's too dry, you can add more water to it. Again, up to 350 grams, add more liquid. This is pretty shaggy, pretty dry, but I know that if I mix it together, see, I'm starting to feel a lot better like connectivity to the dough. It's still sticking to me a little bit. Able to clean the sides up. Okay, so this is what I mean by a pretty shaggy dough. Okay, you see it's like, it's all incorporated, but it's not a smooth dough ball. And I do think that's about where I want it for mine. Once it starts to ferment, you'll see that it softens up a little bit. All right, we're just gonna throw that in there. And I just like to scrape the sides of the bowl down just because, I don't know, I saw somebody else do it once. Now, I know a lot of sourdough people are gonna tell you, put it in a straight-sided container. It's so much easier to watch the fermentation that way. And yes, you can do that. But again, you don't have to have like super special extra tools for this. Just whatever bowl you've got. And you know, sometimes if you take a picture of your dough before you let it ferment, or if whatever, and you can just gauge how it doubles that way. I don't wanna buy anything else just to make bread. All right, we're gonna put that in just like that. And I do actually, now that I'm playing with it a little bit more, I think it's a little too dry for me. So instead of adding a couple of drops of water, I'm just gonna wet my hands and just kind of work the dough a little bit and work a few more drops of water into it. That feels better to me. And again, you're looking for a shaggy dough, you pull it apart, it's gonna break. It's still a little bit sticky, but not sticking completely to your hands. All right. We're gonna throw this in this and let it sit for at least a half an hour to do that fermentalized stage. And we'll come back and we'll do some stretch and folds in about a half an hour, which for you is going to be about that long. Now remember how it looked all nice and shaggy when I take it, and you can see it's very, very elastic now. We're gonna stretch by one corner and fold. So pull up and stretch and fold. And we're just gonna do this 4 times. So make a complete 360 with the dough. And then we're gonna cover it up for about 30 more minutes and we'll come back to it. When we come back to it, that's when we're gonna start adding in some inclusions. I think for this, because we're doing like an apple caramel roll, I think we're gonna add some cinnamon sugar and I don't know, some nuts maybe? No, we won't put nuts in it. We'll just do some cinnamon sugar. The dough feels really good for being applesauce. So after I do the first set of stretch and folds, I kind of like to do this and just kind of smooth it out. You can see that I'm already developing some bubbles there, which is awesome. That means we're on the right track. All right, let's talk for a minute about why I highly recommend using a scale when you're baking and not just using cup measurements. Right here, I have my scale, right? I have 4 different containers, all exactly the same size. 3 of them are filled with flour all the way to the top. I'm gonna take this one, stick it on my scale, and then I'm going to zero it out so that it weighs nothing. So now we're not comparing what the glass weighs, okay? So let's take our first one here and put it on the scale. That is 135 grams of flour. Let's look at this one. That is 154 grams of flour. And let's look at this last one. That is 184 grams of flour. So when you use a scale, you can be a whole lot more accurate. 3/4 of a cup could be 135 to 184 grams of flour. You don't know. It depends on how tightly packed you have it in there. If you use a scale, you can make sure that you're getting exactly the right measurement exactly every time. Baking is a science and the ingredients really do matter. Now there's some stuff that we've done on this channel, like when I make cinnamon rolls or when I do things like that, where I just do it by feel, but things like sourdough that require a really specific hydration or very specific types of cookies like macarons or whatever it is, using a scale can be a game changer in the way that you cook. All right, it's been, I don't know, an hour maybe. We're gonna do our next set of stretch and folds. And with this one, we're gonna start adding some inclusions. And so in this episode of Will It Sourdough, we're going to add some cinnamon sugar and some caramel bits because I feel like that could be yummy. This dough, it's feeling a little rough still. I do know that it's feeling a little stiff. So I'm not able to like pick it up and it just falls on itself, but it is moving really good. So I still think we're in a good spot with it. So let's do this. I have some cinnamon sugar. We're just gonna Do that. We're including them right now during the stretch and folds instead of during the lamination process. We'll probably add a few then too. What is the lamination process? It's at the end where you're shaping your dough. But this is going to help kind of incorporate them more into the dough. The cinnamon sugar is causing a little bit of difficulty. Probably should have wet that down a little. That's okay. Now last time I did a sweet dough, I did a pumpkin spice loaf. And the sweet of the pumpkin spice and the sour of the sourdough just did not meld well together. So I'm thinking with this one, we might have the same issue, but we'll find out. What other things do you want me to try to sourdough with? Put those in the comments right now. Really don't have to be that serious about your sourdough. Sourdough is not really that serious of a game. It's more by feel and by like, what do we want out of this in the end? And once you get used to making the dough, it's really not that complicated. I feel like people make sourdough so complicated that it's just, people don't want to do it because they think it's going to be so hard. And again, the stretching and folding of the dough is really just creating a stronger gluten. All right, we're going to come back to this in about an hour and do one more set of folds. And then, I mean, it's feeling pretty good. So I think at that point, we'll probably leave it alone to finish its bulk fermentation. Now, with the bulk fermentation, you can play with your dough, you can stretch it, you can fold it, you can touch it. You're not really necessarily worried about it losing volume like you would be with regular yeast dough. So if you wanted to check on your dough, touch it, kind of pick it up, see if it's starting to develop the way you want it to, you can absolutely do that. I'm just going to cover it up. Get these shower caps on like Amazon, like 200 of them for like, I don't know, $4. Anyway, let's let it sit for another little while and we'll come back to it and check on it again. Let's talk a little bit about starter really quickly, because one of the biggest things that I see people say when they're talking about getting into sourdough is it is going to be so much work. It's so much to handle. It's so much to babysit. Listen, I feed to bake. This is how much of Jack I maintain in my refrigerator at any given time. This is about 30 to 60 grams, just depending on what I had left over when I was baking. So 30 to 60 grams of Jack is what I maintain. And I will pull him out and I will feed up to 300 grams or whatever it is that I need to fit my recipes. And then I will put just 30 to 60 grams back in the fridge. It can sit for, I usually let him sit for up to 2 weeks before I bake again. So if you're one of those people that are super worried about maintaining too much starter, or you have to keep feeding and you keep getting a whole bunch of discard, you really don't have to do that. And I don't know, let me know if you want more videos on how to maintain and work with your starter. But I'm gonna feed Jack just a little bit before I put him in the fridge, so I'll show you how that's done. There's 30 grams of starter in here. I like to do, when I'm putting him to bed, a pretty heavy feed. So that if this is 30 grams, I am going to give him a 1-2-1 or a 1-3-1 feed, meaning 1 part starter, 2 parts or 3 parts flour, and 1 part water. So that's what we're gonna do. And if you see that, those types of ratios that you're seeing when you're looking at feeding your starter and you're seeing it's 1-2-1, 1-5-1, that middle number is the flour. The first number is starter, the middle number is flour, and the last number is water. Okay. He's been nice and fed. I'm gonna let him sit on the countertop until he doubles before I put him back in the fridge. Okay, we have been bulk fermenting for about 8 hours now. So we're going to open this up. And first of all, when you look at your sourdough, the best way to find out if it's good is you see that fun jiggle we've got going on there. But also the reason why I like to use a glass bowl is if you look at underneath, you see all of those beautiful bubbles that have formed underneath. That's really good indication that your dough is ready to go. Now, you can also take your fingers and pull it away from the side like this. And if it pulls away clean like that and just doesn't stick to the bowl, we are good to go. So if I pour this out on the countertop, we should expect that it comes clean out of the bowl with very little residue left. The only thing we really have left are some caramel bits that we're definitely saving those. Because this has been a sourdough experiment, one thing I am noticing is the caramel is very melty inside the dough. As your dough ferments, it's going to naturally heat a little bit. So we've got some moisture that we're going to have to deal with as we shape this dough. All right, we had a little bit of a camera malfunction, but hopefully this is working. So I've spread a little bit of cinnamon sugar and butter across, and we're adding just a few more of these caramel bits because why not? And now we're going to shape our dough. Normally I would do multiple different stretch and shapes here, but because there's so much coming out, there's so much going on in this dough, we're going to do a fairly simple shape. Here we go. So we're going to do, we're just going to, I don't even know how to attack this. We're just going to fold it over like that. And we'll fold this side over like that. We'll put some more inclusions here. There we go. And as long as we've got them. All right, and now we're going to roll and tuck as we roll. And I'm actually gonna do it from this side. Okay, so we're gonna roll and tuck the sides. Try to keep everything in here as best possible. The best way that you're going to get the best spring and the rise out of your sourdough here is going to be having good surface tension, but we're already having trouble because everything's just falling out of this dough that we know, again, was an experiment. So we're going to roll it and pinch the sides to try to keep everything in. Okay, and you know how I said we don't need a whole bunch of fancy equipment? You can get Banneton bowls like this that have like a linen lining in them, or you can just use a regular old, what is this? Loaf pan. So just a regular old loaf pan. We're going to dust some flour on top here, and this is what we're going to use. And normally I would have a smooth surface so that I could cut some designs in it, but this dough does not seem to want to manage that so very much. So what we're going to do is just hope for the best. I'm going to take my bench scraper, put that in, and I'm going to stick this upside down in the pan. We're going to put this in the fridge overnight. I was only going to do it for a few hours, but it did take a little longer for it to rise where I wanted it to. So in the fridge it goes until tomorrow. A quick note on putting it in the fridge. You can cover it with a shower cap and that would keep all the moisture inside. This is already a very, very moist dough, so I'm going to cover it with a towel instead, so try to hope to maybe draw a little bit of that moisture out so that it doesn't just continue to get slimy on the inside. It is the next day, and you can tell it's the next day because the clothing and the hair is, well, it's actually done. We have cold proofed this in the fridge overnight. And she is beautiful. Look at that. Okay, so we are going to dump this out onto a piece of parchment paper, and I have a cutting board underneath. This is just for ease of use to moving it to the oven. Again, we're talking about using very little specialty tools. So again, parchment paper, cutting board. We're going to take this and just flip it out onto there. Oh, okay, now she's spreading a little bit, probably because of all the moisture in the loaf, and that's okay. We're still going to bake her just like she is. We're going to go ahead and cut a score in it. The score helps it expand in the oven so that it has somewhere to go and then you get that beautiful oven rise. So let's see, where's a good place to... And this is just a really sharp razor blade. You can use a sharp knife. All of my knives are super dull, so we are using a specialty blade, but again, you can use anything. And we're just going to put some decorative slashes over here. We're going to open the oven and there should be some steam that comes out of the oven. And then we are going to put this in very carefully. I promised you that we weren't going to use any specialty equipment, so I'm going to show you how we're going to open bake in the oven without a specialty Dutch oven. Do I have a Dutch oven that I bake in? Yes, I do, but I'm going to show you how to do this without specialty equipment because I don't want sourdough to be scary for you guys. Okay, so here we go. In the oven, this is not heated yet. This is before we heat. On the very bottom rack, on the very bottom position, I have a cookie sheet and I have a high temperature allowable pan, shallow roasting pan. And in this pan, there's about 4 to 5 cups of water. So that is on the bottom shelf. And then on the next rack up that allows you to clear your roasting pan. So I have it up on like this, the third one. I have another cookie sheet. we're going to close up the oven and we're going to preheat to 450 degrees, and we're going to let it preheat for about 45 minutes. We want to make sure that not just the oven temperature air, but all of the components inside the oven are at that temperature, so that when we open it up to put the bread in, it doesn't cool things off too quickly, and it makes sure that we get more of a consistent bake. Really, let's try not to burn ourselves. And just for a little added measure, I'm going to throw some ice cubes in. We're going to let that cook at 450 for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to take the water source out. Just checked on it, and it's starting to get really, really dark on the top. So we're going to go ahead and cover it with some foil and let it finish baking the rest of the way. We're also going to take the water out at this point. I'm going to leave the bottom tray in the oven just to keep the bottom from browning too much. Okay, I believe she is done, so let's pull her out of the oven. Now, the one thing with open baking this loaf in particular is we had a lot of sugar and a lot of extra things to make it brown, so that is why it browned quite a bit. But, oh, she is beautiful. It smells so good. We're gonna let this cool for a little while before we cut into it. With sourdough, it's still kind of baking on the inside, so you don't want to cut it right away, because if you do, then you let out all that beautiful steam that it's still working on. So we're gonna let it cool to room temperature before we cut it. Still warm, but I literally cannot wait. So I can touch it with my hands, which means it's not too hot. We're cutting into this thing. I don't even know where to start. We're gonna go this way. We're going this way. My good bread knife is in the we're getting a different knife. All right, the good bread knife was in the dishwasher, so we've got it now. Because it's still warm, it's still so soft. Okay, you get to see it first. Ah, let's hope. She's beautiful. All right. So you can see the beautiful cinnamon layer down in there and all of the different caramel inclusions that we've got. We're, of course, put applesauce in the bread itself. We're gonna go ahead and give it a try and see what we think. The tang of the sourdough doesn't interfere with the sweet of the bread, which was always my problem with other sweet types of breads. This is really good. We will be doing this again. I probably won't let it cold proof as long. The longer you cold proof it, the more tangy the bread, but this is really good. All right, so if you have any ideas for things for this series, will it sourdough, that we should replace part of the bread or part of the liquid with, you let me know. I'm thinking something crazy like root beer instead of the liquid, or, you know, pudding mix or something. I don't know. You let me know. And, you know, as always, we'll see you next time.